Have you ever wondered how your cow herd compares to others? In this segment, I'm going to use the information we talked about in the record keeping segment to show you how your operation might compare to some of those in the surrounding states and give you a little bit of an idea of how your operation stacks up against the competition.
We don't have very many herds in this, but I used the last 5 years of the ISU spa record systems, and this is only a handful of guys, but I averaged them out over 5 years. And you can see in there, their pasture costs averaged about $105, and this is all financial costs. So this is looking at what their actual costs were if they were paying for land. Their feed cost, $391, depreciation, $61, total cost, $660 over the last 5 years. And if you look back at what some of those first slides I showed you, we're probably closer to $800 now. We're probably closer to the $600 in 2010 or 12, but just to give you a ballpark, all right? Not very many numbers, but they're Iowa numbers. And I threw this up here, total capital investment. So this would be the cost of land, the cost of cows, the cost of machinery on a market basis. So if we were to value that, the tractors at today's price, value the land at today's price, about $2,400 a cow. So one of the things is the cattle business is very capital intensive. You all know that, right? You got a lot of money wrapped up in them. But another reason to say, let's pay attention to what we're doing and cost. Just to throw you some of the reproductive data up there, 90% pregnancy rate, that's kind of what we said our goal was, and we're hitting right at that. 90% calving rate, so we're not losing very many between preg check and calving time. Weaning rate, 87%. Replacement female rate, 20%. Why do I throw that up there? When we cull cows, we've got to replace them with females. The more we have to sell cows, the more expensive the female development is. So just to give you a ballpark, in this situation, and I did not add on here the average age at weaning, but most of these guys were weaning around 150 to 180 days. So weaning younger. Average feeder weight sold 480 pounds of calf per cow was 432. Total feed per cow is 4,300 pounds. And I always use a ballpark from way back when I was in college. Rule of thumb, 2 to 2.5 tons of feed per cow per year. And this would say that's right on. That's 2 tons right there. So I looked at our neighbor to the east, Illinois, and Illinois Farm Business Association, and I tried to get Iowa Farm Business Association. They didn't have enough cow herds to send me their data. We can't pull quite as much out of this, and I don't know how these numbers are calculated. So I have to throw that out as kind of take it for what you see here. They have a calving percent based on average cows in the herd, so not based on what was exposed, but average herd size for the year of 87%. That probably would drop to 85-ish% if you used cows exposed. It would decrease it some. They didn't give me a whole lot in feed costs, but they did show me return over feed. So basically for every $1 of feed, $21 return over feed cost. So not a lot of profit there. Feed cost per hundredweight, $74. Pasture days, 119. Hay equivalent, 5.1 tons. The 5.1 tons of hay equivalent is a lot. Another database, not sure I'd say it's the one I would want to compare to, but gives you another ballpark. Then I went to our neighbors to the north, Minnesota, and their thin bin system, and looked at their cost. And here's some data I could pull out of them. Their pasture cost was about 130, and this is for 255 farms. So this is actually, it's in their thin bin system, but it's more than just Minnesota producers. Their other feed cost is about 252, so their total feed cost 383 a cow. So very similar to our Iowa cows that I showed you. Veterinarian costs about 25 bucks a cow. they kind of split it out in direct costs, which to me would be like cash costs or variable costs, $500. Their overhead expenses, I kind of lump that, but that would be things like their depreciation, their family labor, some of those kinds of things, 111. They show total direct and overhead with no cattle depreciation of $624 per cow. I would say that's a lot lower than what we would say from Iowa, but again, they don't have any cattle depreciation. They only have machinery depreciation in there. So I'm guessing they're missing some overhead expenses that we would include. And then here's their reproductive data. They had average cow herd size of 129 cows across all their farms, 95% pregnancy rate. So that's running a little high, but again, I don't know if that's based on cows exposed or average cows in the herd. 91% calving rate, 87% weaning weight, 544 pounds weaning weight, and I don't know, they did not include an age at weaning. And pounds of calf weaned per cow exposed, 473 pounds. So that's pretty close to our system. I threw labor in here. A few of them had labor per cow, and they had about not quite 6 hours of labor per cow. Next, I went to North Dakota. And this is, again, the North Dakota Farm Business Management Program. So it's probably similar to the Iowa Farm Business and Illinois Farm Business and Kansas Farm Business. They had pasture costs $139 and other feeds $200 for total feed costs of $348. So that's kind of been consistent. This is 2016 numbers. Vet costs $21, so their vet cost is a little less. Total direct costs of $458, overhead $114, and total costs, again, not including any cattle depreciation, of $573. Their costs are a little lower, not quite sure why, but there's only 64 farms in this database. From a reproductive standpoint, their cow herd size was 177, average cow herd size, 95% pregnancy rate, 92% calving, 84% weaning rate, 570 pound weaning weight, 499 pounds of calf weaned per cow exposed, and just under 5 hours of labor. So again, another set of numbers to compare to, but you kind of start to see some commonalities. And then this is the Kansas Farm Management Association, and it was their 5-year summary. And basically, I kind of jumped down here to look at all farms. Their feed cost $363, and their pasture was $173. So their total feed plus pasture is a little higher than what we've seen on the other ones. They have a lot in there for interest, so I assume that's probably figuring some opportunity costs in there, because that's a lot of interest costs per cow, 156 bucks, yeah. Vet cost 31, so their vet cost is a little higher. Depreciation $53, and I don't know if that includes, I forget if that includes cow depreciation or not. Total cost of production $1,100, so a lot higher cost there. Their labor is $169, so I'm not sure how they figured that in there, unless they have maybe some hay costs. But if you compare that to their high profit third, because they did look at it from a high profit standpoint, they're at about $1,000 a cow, so about 100 bucks, not quite, about 80 bucks cheaper. Their high profit third versus their average. So you've seen the low end and you've seen the high end, right? In terms of cost of production. This is the other set of SPA data, and this is what they call the Southwest SPA. So it's producers, 32 herds, 30,000 cows in Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. So very different than what our system is, but they've identified some of these. They're looking at 89% pregnancy rate, and I know that is calculated per cow exposed like ours is, because these are following those SPA, standardized performance analysis calculations. So pregnancy rate 89, calving percent 87, weaning percent 84, pounds weaned per female exposed 468. So those are pretty consistent, you know, just under 500 pounds of calf per cow exposed, a little over that 500 pounds for weaning weight. Get down looking at some of their costs. Their raised and purchased feed costs per cow 258, grazing 124. So their feed costs are a little bit less. but they're also much more extensive in their grazing systems than we are. They get kind of into this funky revenue adjusted per cow cost. And I think that is probably before they adjust for cull cows into the system. But they show a cost of about $878 of cost before they adjust for cull cows. So now you've seen the northern states, kind of a range state, and then those southern big range states comparison. All right. This is an estimate. I threw this in just because it's on the other end of the extreme, but this is looking at USDA puts out an estimate. Economic Research Service does this estimate, and they kind of have the total United States, the heartland, which I assume would include us, and the northern Great Plains. And I just popped down here to the bottom line. They're estimating costs in 15 and 16 of $1,500 to $1,600 per cow. So now you've seen the highest estimate. But again, that's an estimate. So, but you see in there too, they've got capital recovery of machinery and equipment, $300 a cow. So they probably are putting principal payments in here, which we normally do not include principal payments in these. And if you look up a little, you'll see their total operating costs. They're in that $750 to $850 as well. So that bottom is really repayment ability. And I think this is the last one I have up here to compare to is the CHAPS program, which is out of North Dakota, the cow herd and performance system or something like that. It focuses very heavily on production and does not focus on cost. So these are all production data. But they have a pregnancy rate, and I forget if this says about 88,000 cows are in this system. 93% pregnancy rate, 93% calving rate, so a little higher, 91% weaning rate, 14% replacement rate. So they're replacing a few less heifers. And as we've talked about it, for some reason, this database always is hard to compare to because they do so well. I don't know what they're doing to get their reproductive data as high as they do, but this is one of the highest ones you'll probably see in terms of pregnancy rate, calving rate, and weaning rate. You get some weights down there. Pounds weaned per cow exposed, 498. So all of those are sitting just under 500 pounds. The other thing is they have calving distribution for heifers. Our system looks at total calving distribution. The reason it's important to look at heifers calving early, I guess they do have cows in there. Heifers, they have 74% of their heifers calve in the first 21 days or first ester cycle, 86% in the second 42 days or second 21 days. Cows are 60% and 87%. We got to get those heifers bred early to keep them in the cow herd long term, because they usually take a little longer to come back into cycle to get bred that second time. And if we don't get yours bred early that second time, we see them falling out. So what's all that mean? Number one, we got to pay attention to our cost of production. That's more important than a lot of our reproductive rate, although we don't want to lose reproduction. That's also very important. But I saw this and I thought it was really important. We need to be looking at our own operation, but we also got to be looking at what are the top producers doing that we're not? What do we need to do differently to move into that top profit herd status? And so what are the things that you can improve on your operation the easiest? And that's why we start with feed costs always, and then move on to other things, and reproduction is probably number two.
In summary, I hope that you see that this benchmarking data is a little bit of a challenge to find sometimes, and also changes on a frequent basis. So staying up to date on benchmarking takes a little bit of a challenge, but there are other states out there that do have some cow-calf record information that we can compare to. It's important that we know how their data is calculated and the assumptions behind each of those calculations, because that's really a key to know how we can compare ourselves and our operation to other states. And finally, I hope that you challenge yourself to continually improve your herd and using production records as well as cost records to help in doing that. If you have further questions about benchmarking your cow herd, contact your beef program specialist, and their information can be found at the iowabeefcenter.org.